Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into an incredibly granular, totally serious analysis of a seemingly simple piece of modern kids' content. On the surface, the Tutu Boy Christmas Wishes episode might just look like your everyday algorithmic cartoon, but when we actually isolate the raw transcript, the literal audio data being fed to millions of young viewers, a fascinating, honestly kind of hypnotic pattern emerges.
Okay, so here's our agenda to break down the hidden mechanics of this digital storytelling. We're going to cover 1. The art of linguistic minimalism. 2. Quantifying the vocalizations. 3. The wow anomaly. 4. The algorithmic call to action. And finally, 5. Return to the baseline. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The art of linguistic minimalism.
We are starting off with a literal masterclass in nonverbal communication, where traditional dialogue is just completely stripped away. In standard media, characters express what they want through full, complete sentences, right? But here, the creators went for something way more primal. Just look at this opening sequence. Huh. Hmm? Oh. Mm-hmm. Huh? Huh? Uh-huh. Oh. Oh. Huh? The character is establishing this profound sense of inquiry and discovery using literally nothing but the most foundational vocalizations. 0 verbs, 0 nouns, just pure, unfiltered reaction.
Now, in linguistics, we actually have a name for this. We call them non-lexical vocables. Basically, these are meaningless syllables used in speech to convey raw emotion without any literal translation. And what's wild is that these sounds act as the entire vehicle for the story. They're relying 100% on pacing, pitch, and tone, rather than actual definitions, to get the narrative arc across to a young, likely pre-verbal audience.
Moving on to Section 2, Quantifying the vocalizations.
Things get really interesting when we take these supposedly random sounds and treat them as hard, quantitative data. Doing this lets us measure the underlying structure directly. And when you chart the exact frequencies, it reveals a super distinct linguistic hierarchy. The sequence is completely dominated by the inquisitive huh and the contemplative hmm. Meanwhile, the sound o pops up way less frequently, basically acting as an occasional punctuation mark of realization. So the character isn't just making random noise, they're cycling through a very calculated set of auditory cues.
And this split brilliantly illustrates how the character intentionally spends the vast majority of their time in a state of questioning. Just look at the balance between uncertain sounds, like huh, and versus definitive reactions like oh, wow, or mm-hmm. By keeping the audio heavily skewed toward uncertainty, the creators are effectively trapping the viewer in a constant state of suspense and anticipation.
If we map these vocalizations out chronologically, it exposes a perfectly structured emotional loop. It grabs the young viewer and guides them from initial confusion, that first huh, to a quiet moment of realization with oh, and then straight back into contemplation with hmm. It's honestly a remarkably efficient way to manipulate a viewer's emotional state without needing them to understand a single actual word. Which brings us to Section 3, the wow anomaly. So just as we get totally settled into this hypnotic rhythm of pre-verbal grunts and vocables, the narrative throws a massive curveball, a complete disruption of the pattern. Out of a 44-word transcript, there is exactly one, just one, isolated instance of a recognizable, highly emotive English word. Up to this point, it's been nothing but universal grunts. And then, out of nowhere, the creators drop the word wow.
The crucial takeaway here is that this rare spike in articulation, paired with the word me, acts as the sequence's emotional climax. The phrase, me, wow, signals a monumental shift in focus. The character suddenly gains a vocabulary at the precise moment of highest excitement. It is a deliberate, highly engineered spike in engagement.
Section 4. The algorithmic call to action.
Immediately following that emotional climax comes the true narrative whiplash of modern internet content. If you're at all interested in how these digital ecosystems function, this is the absolute most critical moment in the transcript. We instantly pivot from the innocent nonverbal gibberish, the to a highly calculated, grammatically complex commercial directive. I mean, the tonal shift is absolutely astronomical.
Subscribe now by just clicking the above subscribe button. Boom. The illusion of the cartoon world just shatters. The creators step right out from behind the curtain, delivering hyper-specific English instructions designed for one single purpose, driving channel metrics for Video Gan Kids TV. The storytelling is paused. The transaction has begun.
These instructions are incredibly literal, totally transactional, and highly redundant. Subscribe now. Click the above subscribe button. It's such an aggressive contrast to the abstract, interpretation-heavy art of the grunts we just heard. It leaves absolutely zero room for misunderstanding. This is an algorithmic imperative injected straight into the veins of a children's cartoon.
And finally, Section 5. Return to the baseline.
Yet, right after this incredibly jarring, fourth-wall-breaking commercial interruption, the system just resets. The video doesn't end, the cartoon doesn't fade to black. Instead, the script immediately drops right back to its baseline of primal vocalizations. Ha, ha, oh, ha, ha. It seamlessly pulls the viewer right back into that hypnotic rhythm, almost like the interruption never even happened. The commercial break is sandwiched perfectly within a sea of non-lexical vocables.
This entire sequence is essentially building the perfect cyclical trap for viewer engagement. First, you have the pre-verbal setup that builds trust and a baseline of attention. Then, you hit that emotional peak of wow to maximize alertness. Next comes the transactional interruption demanding engagement, hitting that subscribe button. And then, an immediate reversion back to non-lexical sounds, lulling the viewer right back into a state of passive consumption, totally primed for the cycle to start all over again.
Doing this kind of granular breakdown forces us to step back and ask a much larger question. When we strip it down to the pure data of the transcript, what are we actually exposing the next generation to when they watch these shows? Are we looking at traditional entertainment? Or are we looking at a perfectly optimized behavioral algorithm designed purely to capture attention and drive channel metrics?
It is absolutely fascinating when you really read the raw text of what's playing on our screens. I'll leave you with that provocative thought about the future of digital media. And hey, I highly encourage you to listen closely and analyze the sounds and unexpected scripts hiding in your own digital feeds. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.